okay, parents, your kids are going to turn out just fine.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by FOCO. That's FOCO, F-O-C-O. If you are a parent of a child or teen with ADHD, you know how challenging it can be to keep them focused and engaged. FOCO is the all-natural solution for ADHD, whether it's for school, homework, or just everyday activities. FOCO helps your child or teen stay calm and attentive. Before trying prescription drugs like Adderall that can come with harsh side effects, I recommend you try FOCO. Visit ThinkFOCO, that's ThinkFoco, thinkfoco.com for more information.
Sequence to be used with templates.
Hey, this is the Your Kids Will Be Fine podcast. I am Dr. Michael Malofsky, board-certified pediatrician, father of 7. As my audience knows, our podcast is focused on helping parents lower their anxiety around their parenting decisions, especially in the information age and age of information overload. And today we have a very special guest, my good friend and colleague, Dr. Lou Profeta. Dr. Profeta is a board-certified emergency medicine physician who practices in Indianapolis and has been practicing. How long, Lou, have you been doing at this game?
Boy, I finished residency in 90. So, 93, but about roughly 35
years and practices in a trauma center. And Dr. Profeta also travels the country speaking to college students about substance abuse, alcohol, and the dangers that can present on campus and in college life. And he is very easily found through his social media channels. Dr. Profeta is one of the most prolific voices on LinkedIn in our professional community. So you can find his writings and videos there. So thanks, Lou. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Michael.
So, one of the things I really enjoy about your talk, and I think that why your talk when you talk to college kids is so popular, and I think this is timely because in a month, we're going to have a whole new crop of families sending their children away to college, many of them for the first time. For many of these kids, this is going to be their first time living away from home and living independently, not directly under the supervision of their parents. And as someone who speaks to kids on this level and who practices ER, where you live in a college community, do you not, or close to one?
Yeah, I mean, I live in Indianapolis. We have some major universities near us, Butler University and IU is Indiana University is just south. Indiana University, Purdue University is in the middle of the city too, Marian College. So we have a lot of schools, Purdue University north of us, so Indiana State, a lot of us
Amazing.
around.
So from your perspective, I think a good place to start is, what is one of the most important things, and you're a parent, you're a father of 2 grown kids who are now out of college. What would be some of the most important things you want parents to know and kids to know about this transition? And what are the major pitfalls and areas where you see where kids are getting into trouble and perhaps blind spots that they can't really appreciate now, but present themselves and can often create problems for them?
It's great. It's a great question, Michael. You and I have sort of touched base on this in the past, and I want to clarify. I also speak quite a bit to high schools. Typically, it's private schools or private parent groups will ask me to come and speak. And I think one of the biggest issues that we come into, and you I'm sure find this in your day-to-day practice too, is the level of maturity. And are these kids emotionally mature enough to go to college? And I mean, you see the social media posts that everybody puts up about their kids and their performance in high school or college or sports or things like that. And we have fallen sort of in this trap, especially in America, I think culturally, assuming that being a good student or a good athlete or being popular somehow is synonymous with being emotionally mature. And it is not. And there is a big difference between being academically successful or socially successful in high school or popular in your sport or a good athlete, and being able to navigate sort of the real world out there and having real life skills in terms of how you are able to manage stress, how you are able to operate away from the confines of your family and things like that. And a lot of parents, I think, need to do a little bit more soul searching about the actual maturity of their kids. And these same parents that would never dream about letting their kids house sit while they picked up and went to Europe for 6 months let a high school kid have no issue or compulsion about throwing their kid in a plane and flying them halfway across the country to a university and saying, here, go ahead. And if you don't feel comfortable leaving your kid at home for a week or 2 weeks by themselves now, why would you be comfortable sending them off to college? And I think those are just simple things like that, or a red flag or something that you need to have. And there's nothing wrong with there's I think that we are way too quick at sending our kids off to college, and that some of these kids do need a year of maybe working part-time, being a waiter, working construction, finding another life skill, and then going to college a little late. And I think that we're in way too much of a rush to let some of these kids grow up.
I think those are two amazing points. In fact, I want to separate them, because the first is, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of high school culture celebrates achievement and numbers and accolades, and does not give parents and kids any kind of tool or even ability to assess themselves. Am I really ready for this new experience? Because for a lot of these kids, they go up, they leave home, and they have their first major academic setback, their first major social setback, things that seem very easy and intuitive for them when they were living at home and in high school, all of a sudden do not when they're away from home, and they lack the tools to actually deal with them. And then things implode and they end up back at home. And so my one follow-up question would be, is like, what are really good markers or measures or ways to assess as a parent? And maybe even if you're talking directly to some of these kids who are seniors now or rising seniors, what are good ways for you to know what your emotional maturity and resiliency is, to be able to perhaps handle these things that you can't even think of right now? You can't even really understand or see what these challenges are going to look like, but be able to overcome them. And two is, what is it about our culture that has made it so difficult to accept the fact that your kid can take a year or even two before they go to college, that they have to have it all together at age 17?
Isn't that crazy?
And not think, you know what, it's really positive and good for my kid to simply say, college is maybe better to do something else this year, that out of an academic setting, to really grow up and develop and learn about yourself. So I'd like to start with the first question is, what would
one of the articles I wrote was entitled "College is No Place for a Kid or a child."
Yeah, it's a good one.
And how we send way too many children off to college. You cannot send a child off to college. You need to send an adult off to college. One of the things that, and you hear this, Michael, all the time. We hear it in our all the time. A parent will be touting their kids about how popular they are. My kid's a good kid. He's got tons of friends. Okay, well, I always wonder if be careful about a kid that needs socialization, like that always needs friends and always. Tell me about your kid by themselves. How often is your kid by themselves? Is your kid fully functioning, able to sit at home by themselves and not do anything, and just read or go for a walk by themselves, or find entertainment on their own? But do they always have to be around somebody else?
Right.
Are they happy when they're by themselves? And if there's a constant need of being around other people, being socialized, that is a kid that I would worry about, because that drive to socialization, that drive not being left out, the always being around other people, it's going to be really hard to avoid drugs and alcohol, and sexual promiscuity, and risk-taking behavior and things like that, as opposed to a kid that can spend 3 or 4 hours by themselves doing nothing, or going for a run, or going hiking by themselves, or meditating, or going to prayer or church or synagogue, or what have you. I'd be careful about a kid that's over socialized. I think that we put too much onus on that as being a marker of resiliency. It is. I don't think it is. And I don't know how you feel.
No, I agree. I agree with you. And I would add one thing too, is that a lot of these kids, through no fault of their own, may not have had the opportunity to actually have a major setback, that they've had to actually find some resiliency, find something with themselves, and actually overcome it and move forward, especially without the direct intervention of their parents. I think all of us as parents, especially in the current age of parenting, tend to default into solving a lot of our kids' problems for them, and being if not for them, being a very major, big piece of whatever process they're doing or going through in whatever setback that is. And the truth is, maybe someone hasn't had a chance. It's a lot of kids. High school is pretty benign and pretty smooth, especially if you're smart and you're accomplished. Everything feels kind of easy. And so having the opportunity to have a major challenge that you are forced to work through and manage and marshal your resources on your own without the intervention of your parents, or without your parents somehow smoothing that path for you, is a major tool in what a lot of kids lack when they get to college, and what they feel completely blindsided by when it happens, because it is going to happen. It's inevitable that in that first year living away in a different place with different expectations and in a very different social setting, you're going to have a major setback. And if you haven't had
Well,
the opportunity, yeah, go ahead.
not only just major setbacks, Michael. Look at modern parenting, even minor setbacks about how, I'm sure you watch, parents interact with smaller
Yeah, all
kids
the time.
about how they won't even let them solve simple
Yes. Yes.
problems on their own.
This
Okay,
issue
they
starts very
interject.
early on in our parenting lives.
Unbelievable. They intervene in every single
Correct.
aspect, whether it's putting together a puzzle, whether it's, any number of 1,000 day-to-day sort of activities that they have to sort of feel like they got to interject, so the kid doesn't feel like he's done it wrong or has
Right.
missed out or messed up,
Right.
or they've got to run interference for every single little brother sister,
Yes.
sister brother, brother brother conflict that goes on in the household. Let these kids work it out. Let them find their
Yes.
way. And there's a big difference between kids throwing water balloons or squirting each other in the backyard and yelling and getting upset versus a kid throwing a rock at each other. Okay, and sometimes we need to just let some of that stuff play itself out.
100%. And I think what's happened in parenting culture, because I'm kind of deeply into that every day, is that there's less and less tolerance for that discomfort on the part of us as parents.
Unbelievable.
And the issue is, it seems very benign at the beginning when your kids are small, when your kids are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 years old. When we as parents do that, it feels like you're keeping the peace and everything is quieter and everything runs smoother. But what you don't realize is that when your kids are 16, 17, and 18 years old, they are lacking certain essential tools, resiliency, independence, all kinds of things that give them the ability to have an emotional maturity, as you put it, to be able to manage these issues when they're not living at home, and are setting themselves up for problems and maybe not a successful transition to college life.
Yes, absolutely. All this stuff, we have to let them find tools and develop their tools
100%.
on their own. And I've written a lot about kids and sports. I wrote an article called "Your Kid, My Kid Aren't Playing in the Pros" that
Correct.
went crazy
Yeah,
about
yeah.
travel sports culture. And my kids did some travel sports, and parents, some of the counter arguments. Well, no, it teaches these kids responsibility. I said, what are you talking about? I used to go to these things. Okay, the parents do all the setup. The parents bring all the food. The parents set up the tent. The parents, drive them from point A to point B. The parents
Yeah.
help them put their equipment away. The parents get them the housing. What are you talking about? Responsibility? Just running out and practicing? That's not responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to teach them responsibility? Have them go get a job at a nursing home and stay, and have them go work fast food.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
that's, you want responsibility. I mean, it teaches them dedication and hard work and stuff like that. But there's thousands of ways of teaching responsibility. But don't sit there and tell me that you running every aspect of a travel sports team for them so they can run up and down
Right.
the field with a lacrosse stick in Hershey, Pennsylvania is about teaching responsibility. It's not.
And
It's about having a good time.
exactly. And I think the other major part of what you just mentioned is allowing your kids to spend time outside of their comfort zone and being uncomfortable. And that truly is one of the more essential skills when you are now on your own, is you have to manage your discomfort around lots of things, around other people's opinions, around your own values versus what you're seeing on campus, around your own limitations and setbacks, and growing past those or into those when you run into them, whether that's socially or academically.
Yeah.
And so why do you think then that this whole idea of, hey, maybe my kid's not ready for college and maybe a year doing something else would be really good for them? What's the block there for a lot of parents? Is it fear of your kid's going to fail in the competition market around something else? What is it that's keeping parents from being open about that as a possibility more?
Well, you bring up a really good comment. I think it's fear. I think it's fear of their kids failing. I think it's that whole I've got to follow along with everybody else. I got to be able to do what everybody else is
Yeah.
doing. You see all that stuff on social media. You see these
Mm-hmm.
kids, and we all know it's garbage. We all know it. They show you the good stuff. They don't show you the bad
Yeah.
stuff. It, they see all that stuff, and I think that it's just sort of this huge competition to try to compare your kid to other kids.
Yes.
I mean, you look. There are cultures, there are countries in this world where kids out of high school go directly into the army or into the government service kind of
Yep.
platform for a year or two, and those young people do a lot better in college when you look at them longitudinally. I think so many more of our young people would benefit from being off. And I think COVID too had a huge impact that so many of these kids are just not socialized to the same nth degree as they were
Mm-hmm.
in years
Yep.
past. So I think it's everything. I think it's fear. I think it's this belief that you've got to compete. You've got to compete on social media, and you always hear parents say, "My kid's in the top 10% of the class." We got a school district here in Indianapolis where I guarantee 90% of the kids are in the top 10% of their class.
Yeah,
Parents,
90% are in the top 10. That's exactly right.
and we need to celebrate average. Every kid is
Yeah,
exceptional in their own way, but
correct.
most of our kids are just average when it comes to being students or academically gifted or athletically gifted or things like that. Not everybody's like you, Michael. Not everybody went to an Ivy League school and played D1 basketball at Penn. And there are outliers out there, and but we can celebrate exceptional by and also exceptional aptitude in school or in sports, while at the same time celebrating the exceptionalism of our own kids individually. And I think that we need to rejoice in that a little bit and find that spiritual sort of balance with our own children.
Agree. I think we have too narrow a way of calling a kid successful at that level. And there should be a way broader way for kids to think of themselves as worthy and successful and contributing.
Oh yeah.
But the problem is, I think that for the majority of kids, the system doesn't allow for that. You are only measured or really rated in this very, very narrow way, which makes it really hard for kids to think of themselves any other way.
And don't you feel sort of? I mean, we sort of talked about this. Don't you feel sad for what these young people have to go through now with social media? That pressure. I don't know what kind of kid I would have become or what kind of adult I would have become had social media been a thing when I was in high school
Yeah.
and junior high. But
Yes.
and you've talked about this. You're talking about emotional development of the brain doesn't really occur until age 25. How in the world do these kids survive emotionally in this era where that so many things are visible to them, things that they cannot comprehend with young minds,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. I feel bad for them. I'm still trying to figure out how best to navigate that world when I talk to young people about it. I don't think they know. I don't think most psychologists even know. You've been doing adolescent health for quite a while. I think it's something you're trying to go along, trial and error.
Yeah.
I think we all are. I think we have an idea about what it is. I think getting back into spirituality, getting back into community, finding purpose. I think those are
Yes.
all things that sort of will help in the whole mental health milieu of all this. That's to help battle this cesspool of social media.
And to your point, Lou, is that I don't think we are doing well. I don't think for the most part that all the metrics are very negative about what is happening to adolescents and young adults from a function and emotional standpoint. The numbers continue to be pretty alarming. And, at least I look at the numbers and I see it in my office, but you see kind of, I think probably the nth degree in the kind of
Yeah.
endpoint of that. And we're seeing across the country. And unfortunately, Colorado has metrics that lead the country in reported rates of depressive and anxious symptoms, suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, we're seeing the highest rates in 20 years and continue to go up. And in Colorado, we're worse than most of the other 50 states. Um, what do you see?
And why is that?
Why is that?
You and I both know why it
Yeah.
is, or at least why we think it
Correct.
is, and I think we're in agreement.
We are in agreement that what hasn't changed is that the adolescent brain and the developmental stages that the adolescent brain has to go through are no different than they ever were. What is different is the toxic environment in which that brain development is occurring, and it's negatively impacting all of the essential developmental tasks that go along with emotional and not just emotional development, but how our logical thinking, abstract problem solving brain develops and relates to our emotional brain. And that is all now occurring in a very, very much more difficult and toxic social environment that's inundated with things that didn't exist in the 70s and 80s and most of the 90s. And it is no doubt changing how kids emotionally are coming out of this on the other end as young adults and how they are functioning.
Yeah, and to be transparent as we are, we're talking about weed. We're talking about marijuana as being a negative effect on the development, the neuropsychiatric development of the human brain. It's why you're seeing these problems exponentially greater in a state like California, which legalized marijuana.
In Colorado, we were the first. We were the first.
Colorado. And but then you also throw in COVID. You also throw in the collapse of the sort of the American family, the two-parent family, and then you throw in the sort of the cesspool of social media.
Yeah, what we'll call it digital culture as a whole has become so overwhelmingly present.
Even though we use it, and there are certain benefits to it. But there is a toxicity to it too, and these young developing brains, man, I just know how the type of person I am. I just know that I would have had a real hard time had this stuff been readily available to me back in the 80s. I don't think I would have been able to accomplish anything close to what I've been able to accomplish in my life, and principally being happy, just being a happy, adjusted adult.
Correct.
And so from that standpoint, my heart breaks. It's one of the reasons why I'm out there on college campuses and in high schools talking about these issues, trying to get these kids to cut back, trying to get these kids to develop a better emotional foundation. It's one of the reasons why you're now on the Speaking Bureau doing this too, because we need to have people like you and me and our colleagues out there, and we have to be in front of these kids, these young adults, talking about these issues and talking about these issues in front of their parents. And I got close to 200,000 patients under my belt now. I don't know how many college campuses, 80 college campuses. I've spoken to tens of thousands of college students and high school students about these issues. So, but we have to take our expertise out there, Michael, and we have to be in front of people.
Absolutely. I mean, and what I think, these problems are pervasive. They start very young. They involve intentional parenting choices and choices from our kids. It's not and like many complex issues, it's not a one-dimensional or singular issue. It has many different moving parts, but all these moving parts are definitely unique to the generational change now compared to 20 to 30 years ago. And
so if you were to think of like maybe 5 key points to tell parents early on, maybe in the high school age, what would those points be to try to get your kids to be transitioned into responsible adults? What would be some of those key things to discuss or to be aware of?
I would say by far, I think that your intentional choices about how you parent and how you manage your children's emotional lives has to start very early. And look, I have a very big family. I have 7 children. I still have 2 at home. And when I look back about what I've learned about this now through my 25-year career and being now involved intimately in adolescent mental health, I didn't know all these things right away. I made a lot of mistakes. And the point is that we can make mistakes and we can still keep showing up and grow and improve and do things better. It's never too late when you are parenting your kids at any age. But I would be way more intentional about intervening and allowing my kids more space to experience frustration and setbacks without me jumping in, because it's easier for me and it quiets the house down and maybe decreases the amount of inconvenience that I have to experience. I would be way more intentional about allowing my kids at a younger age to play and engage either both in what they're doing independently or with their peers in a less supervised, less interventional way, sitting back and letting kids work things out for themselves. Look, minus dangerous and violent acts, of course, but being less interventional, because that has really does show that it creates and generates a different set of emotional skills in your kids if you consistently do that. Now, our parents did that intuitively in the 70s and 80s because that was parenting culture back then. But parenting culture now is highly interventional and judgmental. And I when I ask parents, what prevents us from doing this? They say, I worry about the gaze and judgment from other parents when I'm letting my kid work something out emotionally, or I'm letting them play without me being on top of them. I get actually negative comments and called out for it. And that prevents people from doing what's right, because parenting culture is so different now. And then I would way less focus on grades and results and focus way more on process and growth. All right, so look, you didn't get an A, you weren't perfect in this thing, but you look how much better you've done since last month, last year. Look at the other things that you do really well. I'd be highly focused on that. And I don't know if you ever heard of Carol Dweck, but her book on where she this perfectionism culture in parenting. I think the opposite of that is what Carol Dweck calls grittiness, meaning the ability to apply effort continuously over a long period of time that isn't dependent on whether you get lots of stroking and A's or good grades, but even in the absence of that, be able to continue to apply effort and feel a sense of growth just from that, and not because people are always throwing A's at you or trophies at you or accolades at you. So I think
the book was a book called Blessing of the Skin Knee too.
Okay. Yeah. The blessing of a skin knee, all of that. I would be, if I were doing this again, when I was starting over, I would be highly intentional and focused on those things. And what I always tell people, it's not easy when you are in the trenches and you have little kids and you are trying to juggle jobs and a marriage and small children. It's not easy to have all these things in the front of your head and do it right all the time. So giving yourself some forgiveness to be able to go, all right, so I didn't get it right today, but at least I recognize that. And I'll try and do better tomorrow when I'm a little better rested and things aren't blowing up all over the place. Some days are going to be like that. Those are the things that I would tell people to start with from at the outset as parents. And that will inevitably, I believe, and then of course, managing your kids' exposure and being really clear on cannabis has been a nightmare for Colorado. It's way more accessible than alcohol. The potency is completely different than it used to be 30 years ago. The amount of regular chronic use that I see in our high schools, just in our area, most kids, by the time they reach 11th grade, 75% of them have had some exposure or use. And I don't know what the numbers are, but there's a lot of regular daily use. And the amount of devastation that I'm seeing to kids' mental health because of that is a daily occurrence. And so
the amount of psychosis we're seeing in young people, I never in my lifetime thought I would see this. The amount of suicidality and just florid psychosis that's in kids 14, 15, 16 that we never used to see.
Exactly.
Before.
And psychosis is obviously, when you're an ER doctor, that's what's going to walk into you. And what I'm seeing in the are kids who are relying on it as a way to sleep, as a way to manage their negative feelings just in normal day-to-day typical situations, but they have no tools to, or weren't given the opportunity to develop those tools. So cannabis seems a real convenient and easy way to make yourself just feel better all the time without knowing that at the same time, it's massively undermining and eroding your ability to manage your emotional life, because in the developing brain, and the brains of high school and college kids are still completely developing, it it really cripples those connections and the development of those connections. Not to mention your just general academic abilities and cognitive abilities.
Right.
You are changing the version of yourself that you want to be. The outcome there is being altered with regular use. So those would be my priorities as a parent.
And I tell, when I go to colleges, we certainly talk about drug and alcohol use and stuff like this, but we also talk about trying to dissociate from social media and being away for a while, getting off the phone, especially putting it down a couple hours before bedtime, so help your brain get into REM sleep a little bit better, because that is so important, getting that rapid eye movement sleep to allow your brain to recover. And it's so hard when you're overstimulated with social media, but the disconnect. And I've brought this up many times, that the kids that have some sort of religious connection, if they go to church, they go to synagogue on a regular basis, or have those type of connections, they do better. All the studies show that they do better emotionally. The culture is more conducive, and to finding a cause and to finding a purpose. And there's so much garbage out there with activism and social media and being a warrior for justice, or any number of things out there that, and most of these kids do not have the insight into these different issues. And I tell them, I say, pick one thing. If it's the environment, then go pick up trash once a week. Okay. If it's, healthcare to the poor, then go volunteer in a nursing home. But go find something to do maybe once a week. Work in a food bank, deliver meals on wheels, something, but on the ground activism, not just dancing to raise money for a cancer ward in a pediatric hospital and calling that community service.
Correct.
There's a big difference between just asking somebody else for money and giving it to a third party cause, as opposed to just being there on the ground in the real world and being a part of the solutions. And that'll help them find purpose. It'll help them find meaning, and that the world's bigger than them, and be an outlet for them. And it helps their brains recover emotionally. It helps them create emotional intelligence. And chances are they're going to be interacting with like-minded people that have similar, world views that are conducive to longevity, as opposed to partying every weekend and stuff like that. So those are tools that they should be developing early too in high school, creating those kind of friendships and those bonds, and encouraging those kind of bonds.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with being passionate or wanting a cause to be important to you, but there's a very big difference between standing out and holding a sign and screaming at people who walk by you on your cause, versus someone who doesn't do that, but is showing up every day and doing something that may feel a little uncomfortable, like you pointed out, but gives you firsthand sort of involvement in whatever that cause is. And
it's one of the reasons why I love being ER doc. I get paid to be to do community activism on a daily basis. I get to provide health care to the poor, to the underserved, people have no other access. I help people get into mental health counseling, get them food, get them bus passes, help get them clothed, get them into shelters and things like that. It's an incredibly wonderful, rewarding experience. And it's why I'm still doing it at age 61. And I encourage more young people to get out there and just be a part of something. Reach out to me, reach out to you. We'll steer you toward causes in your community that you can be involved in, that'll help you.
Exactly.
And help you find peace.
Exactly. When you are interacting or have the unfortunate sort of experience of having to manage young people's mental health issues when they end up in the ER, what do you see? What is usually bringing those kids to you at that point? The real kind of scary outlier things, and it's almost always some form of acting out because they are not in a good place. So, what is it?
Yeah.
And it's important for parents to know what that is, not to overly scare them, but to just understand the reality of what this can look like.
Well, we'll see kids that start to develop psychosis from marijuana use, that start acting more and more bizarre. Kids that are threatening suicide. Kids that actively participate in some sort of suicidal gesture, like an overdose or what have you. Then we get self-mutilation behavior, cutting, taking razors to their wrist or their arms. And most of those are pretty extreme. But then we have other people that are just major depression, and the parents don't know where to turn and can't get them out of it, and they just want help. And they finally sort of get to that point, and they come in. And a lot of the stuff, the problems they're dealing with are not that big a deal. There's stuff like Michael, when you and I were kids, or when you and I were that age, we would never even show up in the emergency department too. And it's not like that we're gaslighting. It just shows you that the level of resilience to deal with some normal day-to-day stressors,
Yes.
man, that bar has really dropped. And you sit there and you're, well, she's not doing well in school. What do you mean by, well, she got like 2 C's? What are you talking about? My parents would have been thrilled if I'd gotten a C's in some of the classes I took.
Or
Okay.
alternatively, my parents wouldn't.
Think I'm learning this.
Exactly. My parents
Yeah.
wouldn't have involved themselves in my C's. That's the point.
Yeah.
My C's would have been my C's, my D's, my failed whatever would not have been something that my parents would have thought for themselves to get involved with, because they would be expecting me to understand what it is, feel bad about it, get over it, create a path to rectifying it and acting on that and moving forward.
Right.
In fact,
relationship
Exactly.
stuff, or a kid that doesn't make the cheerleading squad or the baseball team,
Right.
and he's been real depressed now, or had a breakup with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and just normal adolescent stuff that all of a sudden are pushing these kids over the edge. And you're like, wait a minute, wait. In the olden days, we used to be sad, we used to talk about our friends, and then we go on and do something else.
Why is this pedestrian experience a crisis for so many?
I don't know.
And it goes back to the point is we're not giving them tools enough.
Right.
The culture, parenting culture, digital culture, all these things are kind of working. Our kids are swimming upstream against a very, very rough current to develop, to learn and develop these tools to manage what to your point, should be very formative, pedestrian, common setbacks that are part.
And it's why I think that we need to embrace a lot more of these young people not going to college right out of high school. Take a year off, go get a part-time job. And, I always make a joke, let your kid have a gap year. And when I mean a gap year, I don't mean go trape around Thailand for a year. I mean, go work at the Gap for a year.
Do something. Yeah. Do something where you have to grow.
My youngest boy, who manages a big cryptocurrency hedge fund, will tell you that the best education he ever got was working as a waiter at a Greek restaurant near our house. And just stuff like that. People, the amount of knowledge that you gain by doing real labor, by being out there, by interacting with the world on a day-to-day basis. Go give them a part. And besides, you're going to spend all that money on Uber Eats anyways in their first year, so you might as well make them earn some cash before they go to college.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with pulling your kid aside and say, hey, do you have any interest about like taking a year off and maybe take a small engine mechanics class and go work at a restaurant and get some carpentry skills, or go, whatever, work at in healthcare or something, like just get a job, make a few $1,000, take a year off, let your brain recover. And then this way you can have a better idea about what you want to do when you go to college.
100%. 100%. One of my biggest success stories in my mental health clinic was a kid who, parents were divorced when he was young. The father was a very emotionally abusive person. The mother struggling to do her best. And the kid, basically high school was just some place to house him. He didn't really invested, didn't have any direction. He decided he would learn how to weld. So he took the 6-month course, became certified, did an apprenticeship, all while finishing high school, because grades didn't really matter to him. So he didn't care if he got C's, D's, whatever. Spent the next year working as a welder, made $200 to $300 an hour, learned about working with people, learned about when people sometimes, when you don't live up to others' expectations, and how to manage that, how to fix it, how to improve and grow in what you're doing, how to be an employee, and then how to supervise other people. Learned all these things that he never really dreamed of. And then became really focused on, okay, now I know what I want to do in college, because I now can see a path to what that looks like. And he did great. And despite the fact that all through middle school and most of high school, he was seeing a parade of psychiatrists who were throwing him on meds because of his behavior and his emotional life. And no one ever thought that he'd be able to function independently. But he did. He grew up and he learned a ton about himself and the confidence and self-reliance and tools that he gained just from, like what you pointed out, doing something that he took responsibility for, he became good at and challenged himself with. So we need more of that. We need more parents and kids recognizing the value of that, maybe even before you commit to whatever your college experience is going to be.
Well, I'll tell you, when parents, I'll mention to a kid, I'll say, well, are you going to college next year? And mom and dad will say, well, he wanted to try to make some money, work for about a year. They always say it like in a way of like, well, he's disappointing us, or, we don't necessarily agree with it. And I always come back, man, I think that's great, because if I had to do it all over again, I would have taken a year
100%.
off.
I would have too.
And I tell people that, keep your kids home after high school for a year. Let them go get a job. Let them work. Let them earn some money. Let them get out there, develop, grow into themselves. They will go to college so much more mature and so much more ready than these kids that are coming out of high school. And I think it's wonderful. Every time I hear it, my heart soars, because I know that's the right decision for so many of these kids, and that's what they need to do. And I just wish parents would be more excited and enthusiastic about that prospect, as
100%.
opposed to acting like it's a failure on their part when it isn't. I mean, I think it shows great grit and great fortitude and great insight for a kid to say, you know what, I may not be ready. I want to make some money. I want to take a little burden off my parents. I want to grow into myself a little bit, have a better idea what I want to do.
So to wrap it up, I think we both agree that kids are lacking a lot of essential tools when they get to that threshold of leaving for college, because of a whole variety of moving parts: parent culture, digital culture, what poor education and too early exposure to substance culture, especially cannabis culture in high school. That this seems to be this parental block around the idea of giving your kids space after high school to not just feel the pressure to have to go to college to please you or to fulfill some competitive, imaginary competitive race you think your kid is in, and give them a chance to grow and develop and mature, because so many kids aren't getting that opportunity in the normal 4-year span of high school. And that you've seen, and you see the real negative outcome of that, because kids are literally falling apart around normal pedestrian challenges that shouldn't be creating crises in 18, 19, and 20-year-olds the way that they are. I'm gonna also wrap up by saying, I think it's really important for parents to hear and see if you would agree with this. Lisa D'Amour is a really big adolescent psychologist in social media. And the one thing she talks about is coach your kids about what mental health really is and what it isn't. And she says mental health is not that you're supposed to feel calm and relaxed and good every day, because that's not a realistic expectation of life. But what it does mean is that your feelings make sense to you and have a context to you that you can understand.
Yeah.
1. And then 2 is that you have a way to manage those negative feelings and setbacks in a healthy and a productive way that moves you forward, instead of having these negative feelings and setbacks become huge holes and dead ends that you can't move forward and get out of. So
Absolutely.
I think that.
Awesome. And also, I would add too, Michael, that if just as a plug, if your high school, if your college are looking for speakers, I'm on the speaking circuit with Greek University, as are you. Yep. I speak primarily about drug and alcohol abuse and sexual assault issues on college campuses. You're more tailored toward mental health, but a lot of our stuff crosses over. Yep. But we'd be happy to come to your high schools. We'd have to come to your colleges.
We'd love to come.
Have them reach out
and
ask us. And we've done this quite a bit, and we'd be happy to answer questions for you.
If people want to reach out, do they reach out through Greek University?
That's what I'd probably do. Both of us are easily found on social media too, on LinkedIn. We both have pretty big followings on LinkedIn, and we can route you the right.
And I'm also on Instagram and TikTok, as my audience knows, so they can find me there. And yeah, absolutely. I think that these are important topics, and getting competent people who can communicate these things to your kids and to the parents is a valuable tool. And so hopefully everyone will have a successful rest of the summer and get your kids launched to college in a healthy way, or maybe decide after hearing this that, it may be a better idea to not do that this year and do something else, which would be equally of a tremendous decision for the family and for your kids.
Absolutely.
All right, Lou, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate your time, and
Pleasure,
looking
Michael.
forward to hearing from everybody.
All right.
Remember, find us on all platforms where you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere else where podcasts are found. Go to our webpage, yourkidswillbefine.com, where you can download all the episodes, leave us comments and show suggestions. Looking forward to next time. Comments and show suggestions. Looking forward to next time.